Well, welcome to Drydock Talk with the TSG. I am your host, Matt.
I am your other host, Nathan, and already we have our special guest, Megan Warner, busting up. What's so funny?
Drydock Talk?
Did we not tell you
what? No, he didn't tell me what it was called.
Yep.
I like it. I'm not laughing for a bad reason. I think that's fun. I just didn't know what it was called.
Yep, this is officially Drydock Talk with the TSG.
The two space group. I mean, the two space guys.
Two space guys, yeah.
That's great. I love it.
We, as mentioned, we are sitting here in the office of this Krista McAuliffe Space Education Center with none other than the famous Megan Warner. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Nathan.
We are really excited to have you with us, and we're sure that all of the people that we know are going to listen at some point in the future are quite excited to hear what you have to say.
I don't know about that, but I am excited to be here.
Well, so first off, who are you?
I'm Megan.
Well, tell us about yourself, Megan.
What do you want to know?
How would you describe yourself?
How would I describe myself? I'm a brat. I don't know. I really don't like that question.
We totally put you on the
Okay,
spot.
so let's ask this.
Yeah.
How did you become
please.
first involved with the Space Center?
That one I can answer.
Okay,
Alright.
awesome.
So I actually I came on a field trip with my 6th grade class from Alpine Elementary.
Woohoo!
Go Eagles. I think that's what they are.
I feel like all elementary schools are Eagles.
Most of them are in the
Mine
school
was
district,
Mustangs,
especially.
Thank you very much, but anyway.
Well,
sorry,
except for
carry
Central
on.
Tigers, you know.
So we found the two that are different. Yeah, so I came with my school group, and then we came on an overnighter, and I had a group of friends that we just fell in love with it. And there were actually two of my friends. By the time we came on our field trip, one of them was a captain and one of them was a marshal in the ranking system. So they were like,
Way up there.
captain and marshal were at that time probably like the 5th and 6th or 6th and 7th ranks in the ranking system.
Wow.
And that was before we came on our field trip, and they were like, "Guys, you're gonna love it." And then I was like, "Meh, I am not a Star Trek person."
Uh-huh.
And
Me neither. in
every
all
time,
honesty, so.
every time Vic heard me say that, he got really mad. There was, side note, there was one time I was sitting in the Voyager during an overnighter, and I said something about not liking Star Trek, and he was at his desk back when it was in there, and he heard me say it. Apparently, he said, "Megan, I'd fire you if I could." And I just leaned out the door and I said, "Thank you, sir." That's the end of the conversation. It was great. But yeah, so I didn't really think anything of it, but then I ended up just loving it. And my little group of friends, we just came over and over and over.
You were that kid.
We were the kind of group that if we booked a mission at like 11 o'clock on a Saturday, and then another group wanted the same ship at 11 o'clock on Saturday, Vic would call us and say, "Hey, somebody else wants the time. Can we move you?"
Wow.
Like, that's how well they all knew us. And they had to make new rules about votes on overnighters because of us, too. Because
Really?
of the way that we would do things.
What do you mean?
So, like, Kyle Herring
Uh-huh.
was our favorite staff member when we were campers. And we would vote for him even if he wasn't there. Yeah, we would just vote for him every time. He always got our first place votes. Second and third would go to people that, we actually liked during the camp. But first place always went to Kyle. So Vic said, "Okay, you have to vote for people that are here." And I don't know if this was a complete rule change or if he only said it when we were there. But I feel like he would have forgotten if he wasn't saying it every single time. He probably did. So he's like, "Okay, you have to vote for people that are actually at the camp." And we're like, "Okay." So then we would
And other people are just like, "Oh, what the
and we
heck?"
would find Kyle and be like, "Oh, he's here!" And then we would vote for him, even though
Even
we
if you had
had
nothing
never
to do with
even
your flight.
we never talked to him or anything like that. So then he said, "Okay, guys, you have to have talked to the person you want to vote for.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So then we would find him and we would go up to him and say, "Hi, Kyle," and make sure he said hi back. And they're like, "Yes, we got this." So, yeah. So we did that for a couple years. And then it got to the point where I was going to age out and not be able to come on camps anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want that to happen. So I started volunteering.
And here you are.
History or something.
So what did you spend most of your time at the Space Center doing?
What do you mean?
Well, once you joined the staff, you were flying ships, correct? You were flight
Eventually,
director?
yes.
Eventually.
I started volunteering back in the day where there were 2 tiers of volunteers. There were pioneers and there were voyagers. Pioneers were only allowed to do private camps or private missions, except I got to work my little brother's overnighter for his school because he was my brother, so I was the only pioneer on that camp.
And those were the red shirts, right?
Yeah, they were the kind of maroony color.
Yeah.
And then I got, so that, it took me probably about a year to get up from pioneer to voyager.
Mm-hmm.
And then the voyagers were allowed to do the camp, so I started doing that. All the camps. I didn't do anything else, and so I was here as much as the paid staff, just not getting paid. And then as soon as I was old enough, because back then there was a rule about it, you had to be 15 in order to train to be a flight director. So as soon as I hit 15, I said, "Okay, I want to do this." It was actually James was chosen to train me.
James Porter?
James Porter was chosen to train me. And so I talked to Vic about it, and he said, "Yeah, James is going to train you." I said, "Okay." So I went on to James, and I said, "James, Mr. Williamson says you're supposed to train me to be a flight director." He said, "Okay, put a music library together." And then he quit. Like 3 days later, he quit. So he technically, officially, quote unquote, started my training. But
hey, how has that music library served you since then?
I still take soundtracks and listen to them. This would be great in a mission.
So he gave you a great start.
I guess. I mean, it wasn't like now with really easy music sharing and stuff where he would say, "Here's my library, add to it." Mm-hmm. You had to go buy CDs.
Wow.
So I did.
Or like burn CDs or something else.
Well, burning was not really a big thing back then yet either.
Oh.
This was back in the day where like a blank CD cost $20.
Wow.
For one. So, I mean, once I actually got passed off, and about a year later, we started burning them a lot more. But when I started training, it was not a common practice.
So what ship did you fly?
I started in the Odyssey.
Oh, really?
I trained all summer. Chris Call is the one that actually ended up training me, for real.
Cool.
And we decided to call me the Odyssey supervisor because I was in the Odyssey all summer with him, again, on all the camps and everything like that. And I basically was like a supervisor that the big ships had. You know, I'd make sure the away missions were set up and all that stuff, and I was his supervisor. And then we were actually doing a remodel of the Odyssey at the end of that summer. And I remember going out in the office and looking in the calendar book. And back then, Vic put the name of the flight director in the book next to the flight. And I was looking at the book for some reason. I think I was checking on like how long we had to finish our remodel or something like that. Because, you know, it's a Space Center remodel. We needed every second we could get.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And I went and looked, and I saw my name next to a flight. And I was like, "Vic, what does this mean? Why is my name there?" He's like, that means you're flying." And I was like,
What?
"I'm not passed off yet." He's like, "I guess you are now." So then I went and asked Chris, and Chris said that I got my pass.
Nice.
Surprise!
Yeah. And then, so I flew the Odyssey for about a little over a year. Maybe a while. I guess it was 2 years. And then we built the Phoenix, and Vic was like, "Hey," just like the week before school flight started, Vic said, "Megan, I need someone to fly the Phoenix on this school flight on Friday." And this was on a Monday. I was like, "Okay."
Oh, wow.
He's like, "And it's going to be you." And I was like, "I don't know how to fly the Phoenix." He's like, "Well, you're flying it, so."
Battlefield promotions.
Have fun. So I had 2 days to teach myself the controls and how to fly the ship, and I did a test mission with my little brother and his friends, and most of them actually were volunteers. And then I started flying the Phoenix.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow.
And then at what point in time did you actually become the set director of the Phoenix? Because I know you were doing that for some time.
I was the set director of the Phoenix a couple of times.
Oh.
Like, they kept giving it to me, and then someone else wanted it, so I'd say, okay. The first time I got it, I think, is when Kyle decided he didn't want to be the set director anymore.
Mm-hmm. Kyle
Herring.
Okay.
Yeah, he was the set director when we finished building it, because he had built it. And then he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So
he repaid you for all of those votes you gave him as a camper?
No, it wasn't his choice.
Oh.
And I don't think he ever has remembered that was us that did that to him.
Wow.
I don't know. I could be wrong. Kyle, if you do remember and you're offended by that comment, I apologize. If you listen to this, I don't know if you even will. I'm pretty sure that was it, though. So Bill and Lorraine were tag team flying it for overnighters, like they used to with the Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
And so Vic asked if either of them wanted it, and they both said no. And then Casey Vokes was also flying at the time, and he went to Vic and was like, I want to be set director. And Vic's like, you're not old enough, dude. Because there was a rule where you had to be 18.
Oh, poor guy.
And he wasn't 18 yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so they gave it to me. Pretty sure that was the first time I got it.
Wow.
Yeah. And then Dave Daymont came in and he wanted it, so I gave it to him because I didn't care. You want it, Dave, it's all yours. And then they made me Odyssey flight set director for a while. And then at one point I was set director of both at the same time. That was weird. That was hard.
Wow.
That was really hard. It didn't last very long, luckily. But
so from avid camper to volunteer to flight director to another battlefield promotion flight director to set director, and here on the wall in the office we have your name on a fancy plaque underneath that of Victor Williamson as director of the Space Center.
That is a fact, yeah.
How did that happen?
So when, I don't know how taboo this is, when we got shut down for a while, Vic started thinking about his retirement and decided he wanted to do that instead. So they were like, hey, we're gonna reopen, and he was like, okay. I don't really want to run it anymore. I'd rather retire. And so they were trying to figure out what to do with it then, and who to give it to. And I don't know the exact specifics because I was not involved in the conversations. But from what I understand, Vic and the principal here at the time, Vicki Carter, talked about it, and we're trying to decide, who would be the best for the job and stuff like that. And apparently my name came up.
Wow.
And then Vic came in and said, don't tell that I said this, but Vicki wants to give it to you. Would you take it? And I was like, okay. And then Vicki
would you direct the Space Center? Okay.
And then Vicki came in and said, hey, I want you to be the director. And I was like, okay. So.
No feigned surprise. Like, okay.
I think I was still in shock. Like, too much to feign the surprise, because I had never in my Space Center life thought that I would ever run it. Ever.
Wow. And how was that experience?
It was an experience.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I loved working with the staff. I loved working with Vicki. She was great. She was very supportive. It was a rough time because we'd lost a lot of people when we shut down, and we had to hire new people and try to train them very quickly. And
the Odyssey was being rebuilt.
The Odyssey was being rebuilt. We lost a lot of schools for field trips that even today still don't know that we've reopened.
Wow.
So I spent a lot of time on the phone and in emails trying to contact all of the teachers we'd used before to schedule missions and get our field trip started back up and stuff like that. So it was an interesting time.
Yeah, I was one of those flight directors that you had to train up really quick once the thing started opening again.
You were. When I don't know if you've heard this or not, Nate, but John and I were talking about things. So I asked John to be my assistant director, And we were talking about staff and trying to figure out what we wanted to do, what we could do. Like, we need more flight directors. Like, we don't know where to get them all. And so we were looking at some of our older volunteers and trying to decide stuff. And you were one of the first names that popped up. And we were both very excited to train you. And we're like, Nate would be a great flight director.
Aw, shucks.
So
The process for me was a little bit of emotional terrorism, but I remember an Odyssey flight, I think it was, and John was in the control room with me for a test flight of mine, and just taking notes, like, yeah, I'm okay with that, and all of a sudden, at the end of the mission, I see you stand up from behind engineering in the new Odyssey and walk off of the ship, and I was like, how long was she up there?
I was there the whole time.
Wow.
Yeah, we planned that one very specifically so that you would not know that I was up there.
That's funny.
Oh, that is funny.
I scare people, apparently. So it was, we thought it'd be better if you didn't know that I was there. Because then you wouldn't be as nervous.
I still have those notes from all of the flights that you took on me. So I appreciate it.
Sorry.
No, it was good. It was way good. So moving a step back from directing the Space Center during that crazy transitional period, what else have you done? You were set director a couple of times. What else did you do in the Space Center community?
I did literally everything.
What do you mean?
I worked in the kitchen for a couple of summers. That was actually a lot of fun. It was back when we got to actually cook food. We haven't done that in a few years because the district changed some rules, but I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning making pancakes and sausage on the big heater things. And
wow.
mixing gigantic batches of cookie dough and playing with the food. My favorite thing to do was play with the food coloring. Because when we would make the sugar cookies, Alita, we would just take turns with getting
Alita Clegg?
Alita, yeah. Alita was the
Okay.
kitchen manager that summer, and it was her and her daughter, Alicia, that were working in there with me, like the three of us. And we would take turns with who got to actually mix the color for the frosting with the food coloring. And I don't know why, but it was just so much fun to just play with the little, like, dropping in the colors and the gigantic mixer. Anyway, so I did that. I taught in the classroom. I actually was in an astronomy class at BYU, and we had to do a project. And the project I decided to do was to learn how to give the planetarium presentations here.
Oh, wow.
And so, Vic and Lorraine both approved it. Lorraine was teaching. She's like, been the head teacher for forever.
Yeah.
So they both said it was okay, and I would go during field trips. I would go in there to learn how and to watch and stuff. And because I had nothing else to do, I'd watch the regular part of the classroom too. And I was like, this looks like fun. I want to do it.
Wow.
So then I did. I supervised both of the big ships, the Voyager and the Magellan. I flew all 5 ships. Well, 6. I technically flew the Falcon
Wow.
a couple of times.
That's quite the list you have there.
Yeah. I've done literally everything.
Now,
Plus those at TDSC, which is Columbia, Atlantis, but yeah.
you've flown like almost every simulator on the map as of right now. Wow. That's incredible. I remember a couple of years ago, Jordan Smith and I had the idea to rewrite a mission that we had only heard a little bit about. Alcatraz is what it was called. And you were the one who wrote that originally, right?
I did. I wrote it with Emily, at the time Paxman, now Perry. I mean, switch that. At the time Perry, now Paxman. Paxman's her married name. Sorry, Skylar. Yeah, so we wrote a joint mission between the Odyssey and the Phoenix.
Wow. How did that work?
Very carefully. So, actually, one of the only reasons it worked was because Emily and I both got trained by Chris Call. And back when we were writing this mission, we had very, very similar flight styles. We've since then evolved, and they're not even kind of similar anymore. But at the time, they were very, very close. And that was key, because Alcatraz was difficult.
I know our current adaptation with all of the wonderful technology that we can now use is still crazy difficult. So I can't imagine.
Honestly, so when we were writing it, it wasn't that bad. We were just having a blast on the Discovery whiteboard and like, this will be so freaking awesome. And it was, don't get me wrong. But even just trying to fly, we had, back with the old Odyssey, the door opened into the second chair.
Oh yeah.
Like when you're going in, it opened to the
control room
right.
was like
and it would hit the chair.
3 feet of walking space or something like that.
Yeah, so the door was like
Wide.
maybe 2 feet wide, maybe. And then it opened into the second chair kid. And then you have the Phoenix door, which if you open it, you can't go anywhere. And back then, you couldn't open the Phoenix's door all the way because the hallway wasn't wide enough.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, it was complicated. And so we would try to keep the doors open because it was the only way to talk to each other because radios didn't work. But you can't really keep the doors open when people have to walk back and forth, and Vic is sitting in there because that was his office. And the poor second chair kid is just like squished up against the desk that was right there with the door in there. Like the doorknob was right in your head if you're sitting at the computer. And so communication was terrible. We'd be like, well, I'm going to go do this part. Are you good with that? And Emily would be like, yeah, I'm good with that.
Sounds like a blast. But
yeah. It was a unique mission. As far as I know, it was the first actually joint flight that was ever written. We've adapted some since then and then written some more since then. Actually, not long after that, Stacy and I wrote a joint one in the Galileo that we flew, I think, twice. Maybe.
I didn't know that.
I know, most people have never even heard of it because
what was it
we
called?
flew it once or twice. Dead
Drop?
No.
Dead something.
Dead Man.
It's already dramatic.
I don't remember.
It was a joint
Dead
between the
Silence.
Galileo
and the Phoenix.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Miranda
was interesting.
Rendell and I had to do that once on The Hunt.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was special.
Yeah. But yeah, so it was the first joint flight, again, that I know of, that had ever been flown. And we also made it so that the kids, the campers, or your crews, whatever you want to call them, they never saw us out of character. Never.
Yeah.
Like, we briefed in character. Like, they literally never saw us not as
And why did you
our
choose to do
characters.
that?
It was easier.
Yeah.
I know it might not sound like it, but it actually was because we wrote some crazy away missions.
Yes.
That we were like, I don't know if we could really trust the general populace, the volunteer pool. Not to say we couldn't trust anybody, but it'd be hard enough to do by ourselves, much less having somebody else have to run it and be in charge of it and keep the timing and stuff. Because
absolutely.
We essentially, with this story, the kids go to a prison called Alcatraz. Imagine that. And the prisoners have taken over the station, and the kids have to go and get the warden back and stuff like that. So we have this away mission where at this point we had mixed crews. So I had some of the Odyssey kids on the Phoenix, and some of the Phoenix crew was over on the Odyssey. But we were supposed to be docked at opposite ends of the station to do different things, and we went at the same time.
Wow.
And just went to opposite sides of the school. So I took the kids down towards kindergarten hall, and Emily brought her kids up here to Kiva.
Wow.
And we were like, this is going to be insane, trying to make it so they don't see each other, because they're supposed to be on opposite sides of this massive station, and making sure our timing is right and everything like that. And so we're like, you know what, let's just do it in character, and then we can lead the away mission.
Wow.
And at that point, we did have our little walkie-talkies in, and we would talk to each other that way. But, yeah, so It was fun. I really like briefing in character, especially as Kaylee, because most of the time if I have to brief, I'm like an admiral that's yelling at people. So, briefing as Kaylee was a lot more fun. But
Wow. So it sounds like you just had a blast with all kinds of different crazy things.
yeah.
So what's been your favorite experience at the Space Center?
That's a really hard question.
What if we phrased it like this? What is your favorite part of the Space Center experience?
I think that makes it worse.
Oh, yeah, never mind. Go back to the first one.
Okay, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Can I do 2?
Of course.
If I do it short.
Yeah, it's your own schedule. That's the time limit right now. So,
Yeah. Okay, so I think I'll say one is more of an experience, like Matt said, and one is more of a favorite part of the experience, like
Okay.
Nathan. So we'll do a little bit of both.
Mhm.
This one of my favorite experiences, and I'm pretty sure it's just looking back. I would not have said it at the time. Not even close. Was the first time we ran the leadership camp that I wrote. This was another thing that had never been done before. We'd had leadership camps before, so camps for 15 to 17-year-olds. For the most part, they did the same thing as the regular kids, but like we'd go on different field trips. So like instead of going to the pool, we'd go to a rock climbing place or something like that. And they were still fun, but it wasn't all that unique. And then one time Taylor Thomas came over to my house and we said, hey, this would be fun. So we wrote a campaign mission where all 5 of the ships had to work together to do what ended up being the Dominion War.
wow.
And we wrote the whole thing, or we came up with a general outline, and then we took it to Vic and said, hey, can we do this coming summer? And he said, sure. And then we were like, what did we just do? Because then we had to, do it.
Because that's writing how many missions for 5 ships?
There were 4 rotations
Four
for 5
rotations.
ships, so 20 missions.
Wow.
We didn't end up writing them all ourselves. There were a couple that we talked to some of the other flight directors and said, hey guys, we want to do this. If you want to help, great.
Mhm.
If not, that's fine too. But we think it'd be a lot more fun if we kind of all worked together to finish this. Like we have the general outline. We had lots of meetings about it, telling exactly like where all the ships were in the different timelines and stuff. Because we said the war lasted 2 years. And so we spaced out the missions. The very beginning of the camp was the beginning of the war, and then the end of the camp was the end of the war. And so we spaced out the other 2 to just have it at different times. And so, we would meet about it, and like some of the other flight directors said, yeah, I'll write this one and I'll write that one. Like Emily wrote the second rotation for the Odyssey, and it was so cool. The kids actually stole a Dominion ship. So we turned the Odyssey into a Dominion ship.
Wow.
And they had to figure it out. They had to figure out the language. They had to figure out everything was just different, and they had to do it all. But that camp was absolutely nuts. Like we sent John to the Instacare.
What?
John got a door kicked into his head.
What? I'm sure we'll get that story from him.
Yeah, you should
sometime
ask it from
soon.
him.
Yeah,
It's more entertaining. We had the kids up till 3 a.m. We had a spy. One of the campers we asked to be a spy.
Was that
So they were-
Jacqueline Wallace?
No.
Or was that someone else? Okay.
No, Jackie was the spy the second time we did it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
No, he was just a camper that came a lot, and when we saw that he was on the list, I wanted it to be him. He actually, he was one of the more awkward kids that come in a lot.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And, he came on lots of camps, but he would always just kind of sit off on the side by himself and never really interacted with the other kids if he could help it and stuff. And I was like, he'd be really good at this, and I think he would love it. And he did, and he was great. He did such a good job.
Nice.
The kids actually lost. They lost the war and lost the camp.
Wow.
But I don't know. It was crazy, but just looking back on it and everything that we did that week, it was a lot of fun. So that's one of the things I think of when I hear what's your favorite. And then more of like one of my favorite parts of it's always just been like the relationships that we have here. I remember when I was a younger volunteer, we had this quote-unquote rivalry going on between the big ships, the Voyager and the Magellan. And it was so much fun. So much fun.
How did this rivalry happen?
It mostly happened on the war ball court. I don't know. We had the Magellan boys and the Voyager boys. They were like the supervisors. They were the front runners of the whole thing. So the Voyager had Brady and Bryson, of course. And the Magellan started off with just Randy. So Brady and Bryson versus Randy. And then most people listening to this aren't going to know any of these names. But, Kevin Anderson joined the Voyagers, or the Magellan side. And Ben Hoagland. So not the Ben that you know. He's too young for this. Wesley was here last year, so some people might know him. But he mostly just worked during the day. I don't know. They would, jab at each other and stuff during camps and votes, and they would vie for the girls' attention because they were all young, and so they'd flirt with the campers and get in trouble for it. Ooh. And Voyager boys decided to get sweatshirts, so they made up a little logo for themselves and then got it printed on some sweatshirts. And the Magellan kids were like, "That's not cool." So Ben knitted them all beanies. Oh, we didn't even know he could knit. And then all of a sudden, they all come in wearing these Magellan beanies, and we're like, "What the heck?" And we would draw, pen tattoos on our arms about which ship we were joining the team of that camp. And so I remember sitting in the Magellan control room, and Rio Downs is drawing the Magellan symbol on my arm, and we had to make sure we would hide it under our sleeves because otherwise Vic got mad. But it just was a lot of fun, and you meet the coolest people here.
That's wonderful.
So that's definitely one of my favorite parts as well.
So in all of the chaos, in all of the adventures, how has the Space Center made an impact on your life?
You guys ask a lot of hard questions. Without trying to sound too cheesy, but this is just like the most honest that I can possibly be. The Space Center has literally made me who I am today. I'm actually very shy. I tell people that and they don't believe me, but I am. I'd much rather sit back and watch people and instead of talking to them and stuff like that. But through the Space Center, I've been able to find a place that I feel like I fit in, and a way to express myself. When I get behind a mic and Kaylee starts talking, Kaylee's who I wish I was. Yeah. She's much cooler than I am. And, through Vic and Lorraine and Mark and, all these people that have came before me, and then down to, you guys, Matt and Nate, and all the brand new volunteers that I walk in, and they're like, "Who is this random girl doing stuff in my control room?" Everybody just has kind of helped in some way or another. And this really it's become my second family and my second home. And I've gone through some crazy crap in my life, and this was always my sanctuary where I could come and, feel safe. And I know I'm not the only one. And, kudos to Vic for giving us this place and helping me become less of a brat than I probably would have been if I hadn't had this place. So.
Well, at least you have a role model of Kaylee, to strive for. So.
I know, right? Vic gave me that too.
Wow. Well, for the interest of your time and maintaining your current job, I think we better let you go now. But thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much for coming and talking about your Space Center experience, and we look forward to hearing more from you too.
Okay.
After that last session with Vic, we asked him about some of those extra stories that he had, and he says, I honestly don't remember. Oh, this is a terrible Vic impression. I apologize. He's definitely going to hear this. He says, I don't remember most of them, and I'm not going to. He says, but I think you guys are going to uncover a lot of those stories that I never found out about and things that I didn't know were going on. And
probably should have fired people for. So.
I know a lot of things that could have gotten people fired.
We won't put those on the air. But
well, none of them were that bad. But let's just say when Vic went to bed, not everybody else did.
Well, on that wonderful note, we thank you all for joining us this week. It has been wonderful to talk with you, Megan.
Yes,
thank you for
very much.
making the trip out here to Central to chat with us for a bit.
Yeah, thanks for letting me ramble.
This has been Drydock Talk with the TSG. Unless you have any extra last comments to make, then we're going to call it good here.
Yeah.
I don't.
Cut.
Thanks.